Welcome back, everybody, to our database series, Summer 2025. Okay, how's everybody doing? I hope that you having a fun time so far with the database. You probably be able at this point, week 4. I assume that you get your fully database engine, which means that you get a database engine installed. You get some sort of like text editor, the Visual Studio VS Code, to write some SQL command and be able to execute that. Okay, so last week, out of the four correct operation, remember that CRUD, C like Charlie, R like Romeo, U like uniform, and D like Denmark. Uh, the read, the write, the update and delete, right? So last week we talked about the read operation, which is the second one, retrieving the information, retrieving and getting record of data from our tables. Okay, so out of that, we basically focus on the read operation, and we assume that you know. Uh, the reason that we be able to retrieve the information and the data and the record from the tables because we already got the database created. We get the tables already been created, and I populate the data, some records into the tables called book, in our um, online bookstore database system. Okay, so now the remaining operation with the database are create, right? Delete and create, delete and drop and update, right? So, oh, by the way, this week is our holidays here in the United States, Independence Day. In case that you're not be aware of it, you're not living in the United States, you're probably just watching this one, from different places in Europe, Vietnam, what have you. Okay, so this is going to be on 4th of July. So because of that, I try to make our lesson very short. Going to be a very short today lesson, and then we try to keep our section very light. Okay, so let's try to see that we'll be able to cover sort of like the create operation, right? Last week we be able to do all that because we probably get our database and table created and we publish some data in it. Now this week learn how to create a tables and try to insert a new record onto that new tables. Okay, did everybody get a chance to read the project and the database description from the links that I posted online last week? Because what's very very important that you understand the database, the project, the prescription. Read that so that you understand exactly the table that we'll be using and the attributes in those tables. Okay, so let's actually take a look at practice to create a table from that database, from the project description. So let's go. It's a very very important that you read that because you know what, all the example, all the stuff that I be doing based on those tables. Okay, the sample database. Take a look at this one here. Customers. Okay. Well, we try to create something really simple. Remember that, our general approach when we are tackled to learn something new, something big like a language, learning a new language or working with a database, you try to sort of like start out with something really really small and simple. Okay, sometimes that's going to be our general approach, learning something big and large scale like database. Okay, so customers. Okay, let's try to actually log into our SQL database. Okay, very good. Then I want to list of all the available database I have. Okay. Remember the name of the database that I actually created for this online bookstore database project is Summer 2025-Yellow. So use the Summer dash yellow, and then we take a look at it, see, the tables in the database. Remember that? We created, I created a table named books, okay? And then we populate some data. Okay, we actually have, okay. Let's try to run. Okay, so this week we're gonna try to create a tables. That table is gonna be a customers, okay? And remember, we have to know the syntax on how to create a tables in the database. I normally go to this website right here, the W3 School. It's good for you to sort of like have not too many of online resources, but a few good ones that you can rely on. This is a W3 School when I learned how to create a website, how to learn all this sort of like front-end development, the HTML, CSS and JavaScript. I probably use several resources, but this is by far is probably the best one, and I keep using it. I keep coming back to it. It's kind of like it's a great one-stop shop for everything. Web coding related material, and like for the front end development, back end development, database, and I love it because not only it give you the explanation, but it's also a very good example. Okay, so now it's actually talking about is actually have a place where you can actually learn different kind of program languages, MySQL, Python, Java. At that time when I learned how to create a website, I go to the library, a public city library, check it out some books and a few resources online, and I like this one by far is the best. Okay, so let's find, whenever you're not sure, basically just go to Google's and look it up online to see exactly what is the syntax for creating a table. What is the SQL syntax for creating a table? Create a table, okay. See, the thing is they probably give you a generalized the syntax, and then after that they give you an example. I like this one, right? Right, this one right here, let's do this one, create table. Create customers, I believe, right? Create customer, right? Create your customers. Let's say that you have create tables. Customer. Okay, remember that we're not done with our SQL statement, so that's why you should press enter, and then when we're done, we're gonna put the semicolon. Okay, and take a look at see what is the okay, so you have, this is all the attributes, right? The attributes, you have the customer ID, you have name, address, and email. Make it very simple, right? A small table with a few columns, right? Customer ID, make it like, and then you have to declare the number of attributes, the number of columns, and then based on the number of column, you have to find the right tab, the data tab for that one. What is the right tab for customer ID? Maybe integer, right? Then you have name, a column, another column, name, and then you have to define the data type for that, which is like a string, a text field. So chances are it's going to be internally stored as the varchar. We say that the length of it is 50, right? Address, going to be varchar. And then you have an email, right? Varchar, right? And then what is the, how do you actually end with the create table syntax? Take a look at this. Okay, no, you see that? You have to be exactly just like that. Okay, the end of it. Okay. Closing parenthesis, semicolon, right? You see this one right here, the closing parenthesis matching with the opening parenthesis. For every opening parenthesis, you must have the closing parenthesis, okay? So now we just hit enter. There you go. Another table called customer being created. Okay, let's take a look at our database to see whether or not this new table being created. And the SQL statement for you to list and show all the table is show table, semicolon. You already have customers, right? Take a look at to see if you have any. You get 0 data in that table, okay? Because we have not populated, we have not inserted or added any new record onto this new table, okay? And remember, database is actually have the ability, the capability for you to insert record, for you to add the new record onto the tables. Because otherwise, you created a database and then you created the tables and then you are unable to have the ability to add and insert a new record onto the database. Then the table would be empty and the database would be useless, right? So it must have that capability for you, for us to be able to insert an record into it. So how do we add, how do we insert? Which is the first operation in CRUD operation. How do we insert and add new record into our tables? We do that by, let's take a look at it to see exactly how we do it. Insert. Insert, right? Insert into customers, right? Right? Insert. You know what? The insert into those the reserve SQL keyword, and I believe it's probably it's not case sensitive. It's a case insensitive. Okay, which means that it doesn't matter if it is lowercase or uppercase. But sometimes it's a good practice. You make sure that people normally write it in sort of like uppercase letter, but those are the SQL reserved keyword and it's case insensitive. For me, I basically just type it up and I don't uppercase all of them. Insert into customer, right? And then the name of the column. The name of the column is customer ID, right? Name, address, email, right? Values, maybe customer ID. Um, Customer ID, let's make it probably like 100, 1001, okay? And then name, let's make it, okay, remember the name, the data type for the name is actually a text field, right? And we created the data type to be a varchar, which is a string, okay? And then the customer ID is a number, so we can actually put it without using a single quote. But remember from last week, I told you that you have to pay attention to the data type because based on the data type, the syntax is going to determine the syntax we use. Okay, for inserting the input for the text field, the varchar, we have to put them in the single quote. So name, let's say, is Kelvin Smith, right? Address, let's say, it's going to be I don't know, maybe just make it a 455. This is the address of the New York Public City Library, Avenue, New York. 10016, right? Okay, and then what else? Email address, right? Address, email address. Let's say email address gonna be like Kelvin Smith 2025 summer @gmail.com, right? It's gonna be in single quote because the data type is a VCHAR. Then after that, you put, right? That's how you do it. Right? Then you just semicolon. Remember, make sure you have, for every opening parenthesis, you must have a closing parenthesis. So we have this one and then semicolon. Execute that. Aha! So far, we probably we insert one record onto that table's customer. Take a look at it to see whether or not that record just added. Okay, so select. And one way for you to retrieve the information, the read operation, you use the keyword, the reserve keyword select from customer, right? See, you have that. Let's try to actually add another record onto this table. Okay, let's say you can go back to the previous command on the MySQL terminal using the up arrow. Let's say you want to do, customer ID, let's say it's 2, right? Let's say Sean Taylor. And then the address, I don't know, maybe the address is like 447 8th Avenue, right? New York, New York. I have no idea what it is, but you know what? Let's make it like, okay. And then it can be Sean Taylor. that's going to be our customer, the second customer. Okay. Oh, what happened? Hold on. Oh, you know it's gone. We have to change it again. Hello. 447. A. Oh, this is the address of the Amtrak Metropolitan's Lounge. It's one of my favorite places in New York City. The Moynihan Train Hall. I don't know what the zip code there, but okay. Ah. Oh no, wait. Change it again. Ah. I forgot to press enter to execute the statement. So you know that things when I did not enter is gone. Oh my God, sorry. I have to do it again. Sorry, this is the third time. I have to press enter in order to execute the statement. Otherwise, the terminal won't remember that previous command. Sean Taylor 447. Sorry. Okay. Aha. I don't know, just make it up something. Sean Taylor. Now, I have to hit enter, okay, in order for me to execute this statement. Okay, so it has everything. It has semicolon already. Now I can actually hit enter so that when I want to go back to the previous command on my SQL terminal, it remember. Ah, okay, now it's good. See, now when you go back to the previous command using the up arrow, it actually has this one. Okay, now let's take a look at to see if we actually have the second record. So totally, so far we added two record onto our tables, customers, right? See that? Customer ID, name, address. In real life scenario, let's say that this is going to be a very simple, very short, easy tables in our database. But in real life, let's say the name, they have to break it out into a smaller components. Let's say you have the first name, the last name, the middle names, right? So that's why when people look up the information using the first name and last name, you know, not just only one name, right? And the address, of course, in real life scenario, in the real life tables, is going to be the address. They're going to break down into a smaller components, like the number of the address, the name of this street, right? The street number, the name of the street, the city name, and then the zip code. So they're going to break it out into more smaller attributes. Okay, so far we actually have this one. And let's say that if you want to go back to read operation, let's one, you know, or last week, let's try to see if you be able to search a record from a table using the name. Let's say that using the customer ID, okay? Because the customer ID is a unique number, okay? So let's try to see that. Select all the columns. Asterisk means all the column by default from customer, and then the condition is set where the where clause is, okay? Where clause, and then you set customer ID. This is the material from last week. ID equal to, and remember that the customer ID is of data type integer, int. So basically you don't have to use single quote. You say 1001, okay? And then it should return you Kevin Smith, okay? See, that's one. let's say that you try to search the customer ID on a customer whose customer ID is 1002. It should return you Sean Taylor. See that? Now, let's say that you don't know the customer ID. You just know the name. You could be able to do that. But remember, the name of the column, this is sort of like a column header. You don't have to use the single quote around it. You say that name, right, equal to, but when you search for the values of it, and the data type of it is a varchar as a text field, you have to next them inside the single quote. Kevin, right? There you go. Okay, so we probably already know now how to create a table. Very simple. Whenever you're not sure, look it up online using Google or go to W3 School website for the syntax, because when it comes to like programming languages, nobody remember all the syntax. You basically have to sort of start it out something small. If it's breaks, then it's easy to fix, right? And then once you get the simple one working, you can build it up, add more complexity to it. And then you add more complexity one at a time in order to get closer to a real life situation, a real life table in the database. Okay, that is all. Let's say, remember from last week I told you that there's two ways for you to execute the SQL code. You either tap directly onto your SQL terminal, which is this one right here, or you can actually tap it up, inside the SQL file, your code file, and then you can run that code file. Let's try the other way, okay? So since we already have, this is the table we created, right? The customer, we just created by tapping directly onto SQL terminals. Let's try to drop this table, remove this table, okay? So how do we remove the table? Okay, let's drop a table. Drop a table. What is the syntax for dropping a table? Drop a table. Okay, we just say drop table shipper. Drop table, and then the name of the table is customer, right? There you go. Now try the list of all the tables. Just make sure that the table that we dropped is no longer there. Show table. Yeah, we no longer have a tables customer that we just created. Okay, now we try to create that tables in our code. Okay, this is going to be right. What is the syntax to create a table? Create table customer, right? Right. Customer, let's say it has customer ID, let's say it's in. We have to declare the attributes for the table customers, and then for each attribute, for each column, we have to define the data type for this one. It's an integer, and then you have, what is it? Name, right? That's going to be a string, which is a varchar 50. Address, right, and then email. Okay, and then you know what? You can actually save this file, SQL file, and then you can run it. But let's say that we want to make one of the attributes, the columns, customer ID, with the data type, the integer. We want to make it, a primary key, right? Well, we talk about this one probably in the next coming weeks. Auto increment, not no auto increment, you know. Okay, so the customer ID, which is one of the column name, the attributes, it has the data type of integer. It cannot take any value. It must have some value, so that's why you declare none nor. It's a primary key, auto increment. Remember that. This is it is a primary key. We want to make sure that you don't have to come up with the system which generated the number, and that's going to be guaranteed to be unique. Okay, the primary key is going to be guaranteed to be unique, and you want to start it with auto increment to be like let's say auto increment started with 1001, which means that the customer ID, which is the primary key, when the table are created and when you insert a new record, this new customer ID will be generated and is guaranteed to be unique. So that's why, that's probably the definition of a primary key in the table, is that you be able to identify uniquely one record in that tables. That's what the primary key is for, okay? And then you want to have the ID started out at 1001. Okay, that's exactly the syntax for this one. Okay. This one right here, you create a table in the database. I'm missing a letter, make sure. I create a table in the database called customers, and these are the 4 attributes, the customer ID, which is the primary key. The type of the attributes is integer, okay? And then it has the name, the address, email, the auto increment, which means that the customer ID will start at 1001, okay? Now you save this file and you run. And remember, one of the way for you to execute your SQL file is this is the name, the file name, okay? I basically just pass it up the absolute file path. And make sure I have to sort of like change all the backslash into forward slash. Make sure, when you try to sort of like get the absolute file path, and then you usually have a backslash, change it to forward slash. Run this file, right? We created a table in the file the same way that we created, using the SQL terminal. Now we basically tap it up on this file, and then we just execute this file. Right? Now, run it. Very good. Now, take a look at our database to see whether or not the table customer been created. Show tables. Now you have a customer, right? Select to see you have anything in the customer. We just created a tables. Name customer, we have not added or put any record into it, right? Nothing, right? Okay, now we try to add a new records onto this table. We're gonna add, just like earlier, we actually add two records, two customers, Calvin Smith and Sean Taylor, right? We're gonna do that instead of on the SQL terminal. Now we actually do it in the code file. And then one way for you to do it is, sometimes I'm telling you all the syntax, just like you, I have to look it up and insert, right? Column name is going to be customer ID, right? We're going to have, oh, but by the way, customer ID, remember that we say that auto increment, right? We say it is a primary key, is automatically generated uniquely by the system, so we don't have to put it in there. You just insert into a table called customer, and the only thing that we have to worry about is the name, because the number will be generated and it's guaranteed to be unique. So when the new record added onto the table, the number will be generated by the system, okay? So we don't have to worry about it. And then it will start with the number 1001. So you just have to provide the value for these three columns: name, address, and email, right? Okay, then the customer name is going to be Calvin Smith, right? The address is going to be, what is it? What is the address of Publicity Library? I don't know, 445 Fifth Avenue or something. New York, 10016. The other one is right. The email address could be what? Okay, so make sure that the tables that we are going to insert the record into call customers, and then these are the column, the name, address, and email, and we provide the value for each of them. The name, address, and email, those are the attributes, the column of a data type, varchar, and then since it is varchar, you have to put them into single quote, okay? Yep, Kevin is okay. Now you save it and run it again. Okay, now we run this one again. We run this. This is the name of our file, code file. we actually have a little syntax error. So let's go back and take a look at how do we fix this one in SQL. Check the menu that corresponds to my SQL Server version. Okay. We're missing a single quote. See that? You have to sort of like have a single quote here. No, not single quote. It's actually inside the single quote of Kevin Smith, the email address. Save it? Oh yeah. You know, they're very, very sensitive. When you run the SQL file, if you're actually missing a single quote, for every opening single quote, you must have the end in single quote, okay? Let's see. There you go. Show table. Select from customer table. You should have one record. See that? Now we're going to add another record. The second record, the second customer onto our tables. You know what? And we basically going to copy and paste this whole things. You know, that's how we inserted another customer onto our table, another record. This one, this time going to be, you know, all the column that you will be inserted into, it's going to be the same name, address, and email. And then you're going to change the value. This is going to be your new record, the second customer. Sean Taylor, 447 A Avenue. I don't know, the zip code, make it up. Sean. Taylor, right? Okay, this code file, okay, basically at the beginning of this code file, I basically dropped the database and recreated everything. So that's why when I added another record, right, it basically already assumed that the database already been dropped. So I don't have to worry about, you know, I keep running it, executing this file, code file. It's going to be just like they created the table and they put in another values, another record onto the tables, okay? That's exactly what I do here at the beginning of the file. If you pay attention to it, I just drop the database and then recreated the whole thing. So I don't have to worry about, oh, it's going to be a duplicate record. And remember, our number, customer ID, is auto increment, which means that the system automatically generated another ID, okay? Okay, save this code file and run it again. All right, this time we should have 2 customer in our customer tables, right? That's it. And you take a look at it. The number ID is automatically generated, right? 1001, 1002, right? Even though we do not actually put any value for the customer ID, right? You see that. The table actually have 4 columns: customer ID, name, address, and email. But we basically provide only, we specify the name of the column that we're going to provide the values to. Name, address, email, and then this is what it is. But because of the way that we declare the definition for our table, we say primary key auto increment. And we say that the auto increment started with 1001. That's why you see all this stuff, right? Now, that's going to be the end of our short lesson for today. And then, you know, before that, let's sort of like go back and do some, you know, a few operations from last week. Last week, we focused on read, right? At that point, we assumed that we already have our table created, our database created, and we populate some data. Now, this week, we started from scratch. We created the table, and then you actually inserted some records, okay? So now we're going back to our read operation and see that select from our table called customer, where you set the condition, you know, you want to search any customer in that table where the customer ID equal to 1002. Let's say if I have any customer whose customer ID is 101, semicolon, you don't have any person customer from that table that actually has customer ID 101, but you do have, remember that our number started at 1001, right? And that customer name is Calvin Smith. See that? And you want to actually search for 2002, it should return you only one, because remember this number customer ID is unique. Sean Taylor, right? Let's say that you want to search a customer, but you don't know the customer ID. You only know the names, right? So you can do that. Name, and because the name data tab is varchar, you have to put them in a single quote, right? Calvin Smith. There you go. If you mistype the name like Kevin Smith, you know, it should return you 0 set. See that? That's it. You know, so right now you'll be able to master the first two operations in the CRUD operation with the database. CR, create, and read, okay? So now you'll be able to create a table, and you'll be able to insert some record onto the tables, and then you'll be able to retrieve the information, the record from that, okay? Now it's good for you to take a look at some sample database, okay? And take a look at any sample database that have the table customer, and take a look at to see how they design, okay? How do they design the tables? Now it's basically just a simple one, right? If you want to take a look at to see what exactly the table in the sample database looks like, you know, that's going to be a little more complicated than this one, and it's actually closer to real life database. You know, take a look at the sample one, and I have, you know, you go over here, right? This is actually some sample database online that we can actually download, okay? You know what, as a matter of fact, let's just download one of them and see how we can take a look at the customer table in that this database. Let's actually try to download the Sakila database, okay? I believe that when you install the MySQL server, they give you an option, but I did not actually click as check on this database. Let's do this one. Okay, and then here they show you, they probably give you some documentation on how to install this database. Okay, so basically what we download is I can close out this one here, go to the download folder. Download folder, extract it, right? Okay. And then with the documentation to see how do we install, you run two files. This is how you install the sample database Sakila. You run this SQL file, two SQL file in that archive zip folder. Okay. First of all, we run the schema. All right. They say that you have to run 2 files. The first one is schema SQL and the second one is data.sql. Run the schema first. The way you run the SQL file is source and then the file name, okay? And then make sure you're gonna change this one, get rid of all the double quotation and change all the backslash into // okay? Okay, Sakila database. Wow. And then another one that we have to install the database is you have to run the data SQL file, okay? So run that one, data. What is that? Just want to make sure that is the file name. Data Sakila dash data, okay? Okay, now we should have a database named Sakila, okay? To show the database. Let me see, have any? Okay, now Sakila database already been created. This is the list of all the database, okay? Now we go to the database Sakila, use Sakila, and then take a look at the tables in the database. Remember that I told you for every database, you know, is a database is collection of a lot of tables. So each of these database has a lot of tables, okay? And then now you go to each of these database Sakila, take a look at the table in the in Sakila database. Okay, they have the customer, see that? They actually have a customer, the table. This is all the table in Sakila database. So take a look at the, you know, the tables customer to see what they have. Select asterisk, which is all of the columns in the tables named customer. Okay, this is going to be a little, you know, more complicated than the table that we created it, but it's not as real life, okay? So you're getting closer and closer. Once you get the first one, the simple one works, try to add more complexity to it. All right, it's still running, it's still processing. It has a lot of records, I guess. It has 599 rows in that table, okay? You see that? And take a look at it to see exactly. This is a customer table of this database, the sample database. You have the first name, last name. Remember that? I told you that, you know, when we created a very simple one, we actually put name into one column, but now they divide into a smaller, column. They have the first name, they have a last name, which is 2 separate attributes. And then you have email address. The same way with the address, you know, the one that we created in our tables. We just created the simple one, just the address, the one whole, you know, column. But in real life, you have to sort of like break it into a smaller column. Let's say you have the number, the street address, the zip code, and the city name. Okay? So this is exactly how you take a look at it. Once you know the syntax, how to create the simple one, now you take a look at how the actual, sort of like a little closer to real life, looks like. And then try to search for, you know, let's say that Jen, let's say Laurie Wood, okay? Now Rachel Bond. Let's actually look it up a customer whose name is Rachel Bonds, okay? The first name is Rachel and the last name is Bond, okay? Let's see if we'll be able to remember from our last week operation, okay? You use select statement to search for any record in the table from, first of all, use, right, and then you say select. Make sure you have to be in the right database, right, to retrieve a record from the table of that database. We in the right database, we already in the Sakila, inside Sakila database, so it's good. Now, what is the keyword? Reserve a keyword to select our database, select a record from our database, from our tables. Is select asterisk from customer, right? Where, this is where you set the condition in the where clause. First name equal Rachel. Rachel is actually in the single quote. And last name equal single quote, what is it, Barn, right? There you go. Customer ID 79, store ID, Rachel. That's how you practice. You have to do a lot of practice, okay? When you practice with the simple one, now try to practice with a larger table, a larger database, okay? That's gonna be the end of our lesson today. I hope everybody have a great holidays. Happy 4th of July. And I'm seeing you next week, okay? Make sure you probably have your database engine installed, VS Code installed. Read your project description for next week, okay? Thank you and have a great weekend, everybody. Happy 4th of July. Bye.